Mr. President, Prime Minister, First Minister, Deputy First Minister, distinguished guests, councillors, ladies and gentlemen, it's my very pleasant duty to welcome you all to Belfast this morning. We're delighted to have you share some time with us and trust you'll find your day both enjoyable and worthwhile. To all those who are visiting, especially for the first time, you'll find we're a warm-hearted people, and I hope you'll very much feel at home here in Belfast. It's always a pleasure to welcome visitors to our city, but this morning it's a particular privilege to welcome you, President Clinton, back to Belfast. It's been almost 3 years since you last stopped by. I think you'll notice some changes. This hall, the new crown among the city's jewels, wasn't here last time. Indeed, the whole Laganside area looks very different. Just across the road, St George's Market is undergoing major refurbishment, as is the Cathedral Quarter. And the regeneration of Belfast, and indeed Northern Ireland, continues. President Clinton, I know you have pledged to do all you can to support the building of peace here in Northern Ireland. Your presence today endorses that promise. For your continued support, may I express the gratitude of the people of this city. Perhaps one of the most tangible aspects of that support is business. The United States continues to be our main foreign investor, and the continued involvement of your fellow Americans, combined with our highly qualified, skilled workforce, strengthens and builds on the growing economic reputation of Northern Ireland. We're no longer just dreaming about the future, we're building it. Northern Ireland plc is up and running again. I say again, for we have a history of innovators, a people to be proud of. We've done it in the past. Shipbuilding, linen, invention. We knew we could, and we're proving we can again. That said, we readily acknowledge the role played by our friends in America and Europe in helping us to take those first steps of recovery after the darker days. Increasingly, the commitment shown by private sector investors bears witness to the solid foundations laid here with the help of the United States, the European Union. The slow path towards peace is strengthened by a measured increase in prosperity. Peace and prosperity, the two go hand in hand. As we work together, we're finding we speak more and more with one voice. So you see, it's not just the physical structures of this city that are regenerating, the community is too. Business, government, education, the arts, there's a new force at work, a new dynamic. It's radical. It's bringing people together with a vision of what this place can become. Now, Mr. President, don't let me mislead you, because just because we're finding common themes and interests, it doesn't mean we're agreeing on everything. Perish the thought. What a dull people we would be. But that's diversity, and diversity leads to discussion, and that's healthy. I hope you'll notice that in Belfast we're learning to move together too, learning perhaps to play as one team, or at least sharing some of the same goals. A Belfast united, working for the benefit of all the people of this community. Together we can celebrate our successes. More recently, we've had to mourn our losses together too. And as a community, we're planning for the future. And what a future. We're daring to dream again. I think it bears repetition. The violence we have seen must be for all of us now a thing of the past. Over, done with, and gone. You shared that vision of the future with us. You believed in our ability to reach it. From the lessons learned through the struggles in your own country, you can testify to the enduring spirit of good people to work to overcome bad times. Now, communities segregated by the colour of someone's skin are moving forward, striving for equality and justice. I know that you yourself have personally engaged in that process. And it's not just about skin colour. Inequality and injustice arise in other ways: race, religion, gender, age. We know about segregation here. Like you, we know things can change. As has been said, people can change. We used to talk about two communities here, but we're learning. Belfast is uniting. Martin Luther King, during a speech at St. Louis, said, "We must learn to live together as brothers or perish together as fools." This year, the people of Northern Ireland demonstrated their desire to change. That process has already begun. So again, for the part that you've had in standing by us in the tougher times, to the walk you have with us now in these extraordinary days, may I say thank you. It now gives me great pleasure to invite the Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Tony Blair, to address you. Thank you very much.
My Lord Mayor, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, it's a very great honour to be with you here in Belfast this morning and to address you. Perhaps, Mr. President, I could begin by expressing our heartfelt sympathy to you as President of the United States of America in respect of any of your American fellow citizens who have lost their lives in the tragic air disaster off Nova Scotia. You have all our thoughts and prayers with you. And later today, we will go and we will visit Omagh. There was a tragedy that has united the communities in grief, outrage, and yet in determination. I would like in my short address to you this morning to say that even now, even after that evil and barbaric act, perhaps particularly now, we know that today and the future can be different, that the world in Northern Ireland has changed and is changing still, and that the possibilities do exist for a genuine and lasting peace if we can reach out and grasp it. Because the carnage of terrorism is all too familiar to us here. But there are unfamiliar and yet very welcome things happening too. There are differences between today and before. First, there is now a political process underway that by agreement can settle the constitutional principles governing Northern Ireland once and for all. The principle of consent, that there can be no change in the constitutional status of Northern Ireland and that it remains part of the UK for as long as a majority of people here desire it, is now enshrined in law, both north and south. And it is there by agreement, balanced by an insistence that there must be fairness and equality of treatment for all the citizens here, and by a promise of cooperation across the border where it is in our mutual interests to do so. That's one change, this agreement that we now have and are pursuing. But secondly, that agreement has now been endorsed in referendums by all the people of the island of Ireland. For the first time since partition, they spoke together. They expressed their collective will, and they did so over overwhelmingly. The democratic underpinning of this agreement is now beyond doubt or question. It is there by the will of the people, and it is our job to see the will of the people done. Third, another difference, hugely important. All the political parties in Northern Ireland, in the Republic, are committed to a political future fashioned through exclusively peaceful and democratic means. Every single political party with any real support, those connected with paramilitary organizations, now supports that principle. Those people that don't, those people, that small, small number that still hanker after terror, are criminals without a political base, without a vote, without one iota of support anywhere in any part of any community today. That is a big and fundamental change. And there's one fourth change. Today, the British and Irish governments are today working more closely together with greater vigor and better spirit, in better faith, than anyone can ever remember. I simply say to you that these changes are real, are fundamental, and each one of them would have been virtually unthinkable a few years ago. With all the difficulties of progress evident, and there are many, let us not forget those extraordinary, unprecedented leaps of hope that this troubled land has taken. And we need now vision, courage, and commitment. The vision of a Northern Ireland where in the future, here, no one cares what religion or what community you were born into, where they ask not where you came from, but who you are and what you can do to strengthen that community, where the former terrorists' weapons are decommissioned and taken out of Irish politics forever, and where soldiers no longer have to patrol the streets to keep the peace, where political discourse and the debates and arguments between politicians are about schools and hospitals and jobs and industry, not the remnants of out-of-date sectarianism. That vision is needed. And the courage to move ahead, to take risks, to be prepared even when close supporters criticize, to have the imagination and drive, which is the hallmark of true leadership. What I've discovered in my 15 months or so as Prime Minister is that there are those in Northern Ireland, at times too many, who can give you 15 reasons for staying still, 1,500 reasons for going back, but find it hard to give you one reason for going forward. Yet, this is the time to go forward. Carefully, yes, but with the certainty that there is no alternative but to carry on and to go forward. And there are people with that courage in the politics of Northern Ireland today. And finally, commitment. Unswerving commitment to see this thing through. Even in Omagh, even after that terrible act, I found on the lips of virtually all the quietly expressed insistence that we don't give up, we see it through. And our success in achieving peace could be no better memorial to Omagh's victims, to bring good out of evil. All of us have a part to play. And you, Mr. President, have played a part already. I wish to say this to you. There is no president of the United States of America that has done more for peace in Northern Ireland than you. During these past 15 months, I've often sought your help and support. Not once has it been unforthcoming. No call was ever left unmade, no step left untaken. No effort, great or small, was ever too much for you. And above all, your grasp not just of the complexity of the issues, but of the subtlety of the competing claims for justice, has meant your commitment to help was actually matched by your capacity to help. The people of Northern Ireland owe you a deep debt of gratitude. And if this process ends where we want it to end, in lasting peace in Northern Ireland, then when the history of that peace is written, your place within it will be assured. Ladies and gentlemen, we're all striving for that better future. None harder than the new First Minister and Deputy First Minister. There they are, David Trimble and Seamus Mallon, from different traditions, but united in their responsibility now to govern across the divide, beyond the old enmities. Violence is the past. They and what they represent is the future. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me the greatest pleasure to introduce to you the Deputy First Minister Designate, Seamus Mallon.
President Clinton, Prime Minister, First Minister, Lord Mayor, and colleagues within the political process in the Assembly, in Westminster, in Europe, and in district councils. It is my pleasure and honour to welcome you all here today to this marvellous building in Northern Ireland. It is indeed fitting, Mr. President, that a man from a town called Hope in Arkansas has come again to a place where hope now lives as a result of your interest, encouragement, and help. As a candidate for the presidency back in 1992, you made a promise. Senator Gore and I share the goal of all Irish Americans for peace in Ireland. We believe that the United States must reflect this concern more effectively in its common policy. You have delivered on your commitment. Against all the odds, you have helped us break free from a violent and bitter past to set forth on the awesome yet exciting road on our new journey of hope. We, the people of Ireland, also made our commitment when we signed the Good Friday Agreement and endorsed it in referenda. We also will deliver on our commitment. We will implement the agreement in full and make it a beacon of light and hope for this generation. The Prime Minister put it well when he came to Castle Buildings for the concluding days of the all-party negotiations. He felt the hand of history on his shoulder. Neither the Taoiseach, Bertie Ahern, nor he ever wavered in their efforts to help us create a new way of life through agreement and partnership. We thank them for their commitment and their resolve to end our nightmare of violence and political uncertainty. And then there was a man who came as a mediator and left when he eventually got away as a friend. I refer to the eminent jurist and distinguished Senator Majority Leader Mitchell, known simply Senator Mitchell, known simply and affectionately in these parts as George. His patience, skill, and deep humanity eased us through the darkest days and nights and led us quite literally into the morning light of Good Friday. Thank you, George. We are proud to have known you. As we take pleasure in the progress achieved and acknowledge the help of our friends have given us on our journey, we remember the terrible price that has been paid by so many during all those terrible years. Mr. President, when you meet the people of Omagh who have suffered so dreadfully this cruel summer, when you speak to victims of 30 years of violence in Armagh, when you speak to people on the street, you will see pain in their eyes. It may well remind you, as I do now, of the words from a poem by Maya Angelou, spoken at your inauguration on the 20th of January, 1993. Lift up your faces. You have a piercing need for this bright morning dawning for you. History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again. The depth of that wrenching pain can only be fathomed by those who have suffered most. But in those faces you will also see a readiness to face the future with a courage that will touch you just as it has inspired us. Mr. President, I passionately believe that one of the profound benefits of the Good Friday Agreement is the capacity it gives us to break free from the past and write our own history. To do so, we need to create space for each other. We are limited only by what we have agreed. The road to the future is always under construction. The democratic institution of the Assembly will take root in becoming a living symbol of hope and confidence for all of the people of Northern Ireland. We will establish a North-South Ministerial Council, which will serve as a model for inter-regional relationships. We will create a British-Irish Council to promote the totality of relationships among the people of these islands in a sense of harmony that befits our membership of the developing European Union. We will build a new future based on the skills, creativity, and character of all of our people, especially our young, especially that younger generation that needs hope and a future. Consequently, we will give priority to education, sharing Prime Minister Blair's view that unless we get our education system right, our children will not be prosperous and our country will not be just. We will use education and training to combat exclusion and inequality. Most importantly, we know that in the new information-based global economy, jobs and investment flow to those regions which are rich in skills and which have a modern technological infrastructure. We will seek to work with our American and our European partners to create here in Northern Ireland the most attractive conditions for growth and investment. Mr. President, by your presence here again, you have shown a solidarity that spans the longest day and the darkest night. We firmly believe that a bright tomorrow dawns for all of us. With us, as Robert Frost put it, you took the road less travelled by, and that has made all the difference. Safe journey to us all as we set out to ensure that tomorrow really is another country. May I now introduce my fellow pilgrim on that journey, the First Minister Designate, David Trimble.
My Lord Mayor, Mr. President, First Lady, Prime Minister, Seamus, distinguished guests. As First Minister Designate, it is my great pleasure and honour to welcome you to Belfast. Mr. President, your reception here today shows how deeply your concern and interest is appreciated by us all. That interest reflects the many who have migrated from these shores. It reflects the dozen or so US presidents of Ulster descent. It reflects the historical circumstances that made Belfast the second diplomatic post established by the fledgling United States. But that interest today is not based merely on historical experience. It is based on shared ideals of peace, freedom, and democracy, and a shared experience this century in defence of democracy. Above all, it is based on a common language and a common culture, which alone are sufficient to sustain the special relationship that exists between our countries. So much has happened since your last visit. So much has changed. We now have an agreement which many believed impossible to achieve. New structures of government are being established, and new relationships are being developed within these islands. Unionists and nationalists will work together to build a new, stable and prosperous Northern Ireland. Indeed, as Lord Mayor has remarked, it is fitting that today we greet you here in this beautiful building, which when you last visited was a mere wasteland. The people of Northern Ireland are building a new beginning for themselves, which they have, the management of which they have entrusted to myself and my Assembly colleagues, whom you all met this morning. I have no doubt that there will be many difficulties along the way, but in this new era, the challenge is for leaders to show imagination and vision. We are determined to do everything we can to make the agreement work. Others may fail the challenge or lack the courage, but if we do not take this opportunity, our children and our children's children will not understand. The hopes engendered by the agreement are predicated on a genuine and lasting peace. There have been welcome developments this week, and I hope these mark the beginning of the reconstruction of those who in the past have been involved in the same type of terrible violence that we've witnessed in Omagh. Similar terrorism has recently visited itself upon the American people and people in Africa. I know, Mr. President, when you last visited us, you said to the men of violence that there was no room for guns at democracy's table and that their day was over. There is no justification for violence. There never has been. If the so-called war is really over, then there is no justification for holding on to illegal weapons. Mr. President, the path ahead is for true democrats only, and I cannot reconcile seeking positions in government with a failure to discharge responsibilities under the agreement to dismantle terrorist organisations. There can be no grey area. As the leader of the most powerful democracy on this earth, I know that you stand shoulder to shoulder with those of us who wish to protect democracy, and that equally you stand with us against those who use violence and threats to undermine democracy and the agreement. Words alone cannot heal mistrust, but deeds will. People want not just to hear of peace, they want to see it, and they deserve it. Mr. President, as First Minister, I will speak to anyone who has the good of Northern Ireland at heart. But of course, no Democrat can tolerate coercive threats. But once we can speak in freedom, once we are agreed our only weapons will be our words, then there is nothing that cannot be said. There is nothing that cannot be achieved. All of those in the new Assembly must now get down to the historic and honourable task of this generation to raise up a new Northern Ireland in which Unionists and Nationalists work in partnership. I believe we can provide a pluralist Parliament for a pluralist people a government by this people and for this people. There have been risks and difficulties along the way, but there has been progress too. We are, Mr. President, much further forward than the last time you were here, and we will keep moving forward. And I say this to those who are crossing the bridge from terror to democracy. Every move towards peace you make, I welcome. Every pledge you make to peace, I will hold you to it. And as First Minister, I will work with anyone who has the interests of peace at heart. I will be frank, try to be firm. Each part of the agreement, including decommissioning, must be implemented. But if you take the road of peace and do so in genuine good faith, you will find me a willing leader in that journey. There is much to be done. We must move on. We must reach out and reach beyond where we are now. We have taken the first firm steps. We must be brave when we meet the bad patches and keep going no matter what. In this new era, Mr. President, our political and economic links must continue to develop. Northern Ireland can become the gateway to Europe. We have a uniquely talented and enthusiastic young people, a government committed to enterprise, qualities second to none. I say to you and to your fellow countrymen who are so welcome here today, as leader of Northern Ireland, visit here and we will welcome you. Invest here and we will work with you. And if they do not already know it, let the rest of the world take note. Northern Ireland is back in business. My Lord Mayor, Prime Minister, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you the President of the United States.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Lord Mayor Alderdice, First Minister Trimble, Deputy First Minister Mallon, Mr. Prime Minister, to the members of the Northern Ireland Assembly, the citizens of Belfast and Northern Ireland, it is an honor for me to be back here with the First Lady, our delegation, including 2 members of our cabinet, distinguished members of Congress, our Ambassador and Consul General, and of course, the best investment we ever made in Northern Ireland, Senator Mitchell. I want to begin very briefly by thanking Prime Minister Blair and echoing his comments about the thoughts and prayers we have with the passengers and families of the Swiss Air flight that crashed this morning near Nova Scotia, Canada. The flight was en route to Geneva from New York, and as I speak, Canadians are conducting an extensive search operation. We hope for the best, and we are deeply grieved that this has occurred. I would like to also begin just by simply saying thank you to the leaders who have spoken before me, to David Trimble and Seamus Mallon, to the party leaders and the other members of the Assembly whom I met earlier today, to Tony Blair, and in his absence to Prime Minister Ahern, and to their predecessors with whom I have worked, Prime Ministers Bruton and Reynolds and Major. This has been a magic thing to see unfold, this developing will for peace among the people of Northern Ireland. 3 years ago, when Hillary and I were here, I could see it in the eyes of the people in Belfast and Derry. We saw, as Seamus Mallon said, the morning light began to dawn after Ireland's long darkness on Good Friday, with the leaders' commitment to solve your problems with words, not weapons. It lit the whole sky a month later when you voted so overwhelmingly for the peace agreement. Now, this assembly is the living embodiment of the promise of that covenant. Together, people and leaders are moving Northern Ireland from the deep freeze of despair to the warm sunlight of peace. For 30 long years, the Troubles took a terrible toll. Too many died, too many families grieved. Every family was denied the quiet blessings of a normal life. And the constant fear that a simple trip to the store could be devastated by bombs and bullets. In the daily disruptions of roadblocks and searches. In the ominous presence of armed soldiers always on patrol. In neighborhoods demarcated by barbed wire, guarded gates, and 20-foot fences. No wonder this question was painted on a Belfast wall. Is there life before death? Now at last, your answer is yes. From here on, the destiny of Northern Ireland is in the hands of its people and its representatives. From farming to finance, education to health care, this new assembly has the opportunity and the obligation to forge the future. The new structures of cooperation you have approved can strengthen the quality of your ties to both London and Dublin, based on the benefits of interdependence, not the burdens of division or dominance. In peace, you can find new prosperity, and I heard your leaders seeking it. Since the 1994 ceasefire, the number of passengers coming to and from your international airport and ferry port has increased more than 15%. The number of hotel rooms under construction has doubled. And in the wake of the Good Friday Agreement, you are projected to receive record levels of investment, foreign and domestic, bringing new jobs, opportunity, and hope. The United States has supported your quest for peace, starting with Irish Americans, whose commitment to this cause is passionate, profound, and enduring. It has been one of the great privileges of my presidency to work with the peacemakers, Protestant and Catholic leaders here in the North, Prime Minister Blair and Prime Minister Ahern. Our Congress, as you can see if you have visited with our delegation, has reached across its own partisan divide for the sake of peace in Northern Ireland. I hope some of it will infect their consciousness as they go back home. They have voted extraordinary support for the International Fund for Ireland, $100 million over the past 5 years. I am delighted that there are both Republican and Democratic members with me today, as well as Jim Lyons, my special advisor for economic initiatives in Northern Ireland, and Senator Mitchell, whom you welcomed so warmly and justly a few moments ago. In the months and years ahead, America will continue to walk the road of renewal with you. We will help to train new assembly members, support NGOs that are building civil society from the grassroots, invest in our common future through education, promote cross-border and cross-community understanding, create with you microcredit facilities to help small businesses get off the ground, support the trade and investment that will benefit both our peoples, I thank the Secretary of Education for being with us today and the Secretary of Commerce, who led a trade mission here in June, already showing results. Chancellor Brown takes the next important step with his mission to 10 American cities next month. As you work to change the face and future of Northern Ireland, you can count on America. Of course, for all we can and will do, the future still is up to you. You have agreed to bury the violence of the past. Now you have to build a peaceful and prosperous future. To the members of the Assembly, you owe it to your country to nurture the best in your people by showing them the best in yourselves. Difficult, sometimes wrenching decisions lie ahead, but they must be made. And because you have agreed to share responsibility, whenever possible, you must try to act in concert, not conflict, to overcome obstacles, not create them, to rise above petty disputes, not fuel them. The Latin word for assembly, concilium, is the root of the word reconciliation. The spirit of reconciliation must be rooted in all you do. There is another quality you will need too. Our only Irish Catholic president, John Kennedy, loved to quote a certain British Protestant prime minister. Courage, Winston Churchill said, is rightly esteemed as the first of all human qualities because it is the quality that guarantees all the others. Courage and reconciliation were the heart of your commitment to peace. Now, as you go forward, courage and reconciliation must drive this assembly in very specific ways. To decommission the weapons of war that are obsolete in Northern Ireland at peace. To move forward with the formation of an executive council. To adapt your police force so that it earns the confidence, respect, and support of all the people. To end street justice because defining crime, applying punishment, and enforcing the law must be left to the people's elected representatives, the courts, and the police. To pursue early release for prisoners whose organizations have truly abandoned violence, and to help them find a productive, constructive place in society. To build a more just society where human rights are birthrights and where every citizen receives equal protection and equal treatment under the law. These must be the benchmarks of the new Northern Ireland. I must say the words and the actions of your leaders this week and their willingness to meet are hopeful reflections of the spirit of courage and reconciliation that must embrace all your citizens. Also hopeful are the activities of the community leaders here today, the non-governmental organizations, those in business, law, and academia. And especially I salute the women who have been such a powerful force for peace. Hillary had a wonderful day yesterday at your Vital Voices conference, and as she said, we are pledged to follow up on the partnerships established there. All your voices are vital. The example you set among your neighbors, the work you do in your communities, the standards you demand from your elected officials, all these will have a very, very large impact on your future. And to the people of Northern Ireland, I say, it is your will for peace, after all, that has brought your country to this moment of hope. Do not let it slip away. It will not come again in our lifetimes. Give your leaders the support they need to make the hard but necessary decisions. With apologies to Mr. Yates, help them to prove that things can come together, that the center can hold. You voted for a future different from the past. Now you must prove that the passion for reason and moderation can trump the power of extremes. There will be hard road ahead. The terror in Omagh was not the last bomb of the Troubles. It was the opening shot of a vicious attack on the peace. The question is not whether there will be more bombs and more attempts to undo with violence the verdict of the ballot box. There well may be. The question is not whether tempers will flare and debates will be divisive. They certainly will be. The question is, how will you react to it all, to the violence? How will you deal with your differences? Can the bad habits and brute forces of yesterday break your will for tomorrow's peace? That is the question. In our so-called modern world, from Bosnia to the Middle East, from Rwanda to Kosovo, from the Indian subcontinent to the Aegean, people still hate each other over their differences of race, tribe, and religion. In a fruitless struggle to find meaning in life in who we are not, rather than asking God to help us become what we ought to be. From here on in Northern Ireland, you have said only one dividing line matters: the line between those who embrace peace and those who would destroy it, between those energized by hope and those paralyzed by hatred, between those who choose to build up and those who want to keep on tearing down. So much more unites you than divides you: the values of faith and family, work and community, the same land and heritage, the same love of laughter and language. You aspire to the same things: to live in peace and security, to provide for your loved ones, to build a better life and pass on brighter possibilities to your children. These are not Catholic or Protestant dreams. These are human dreams, to be realized best together. The American people, as the Lord Mayor noted, know from our own experience about bigotry and violence rooted in race and religion. Still today, we struggle with the challenge of building one nation out of our increasing diversity. But it is worth the effort. We know we are wiser, stronger, and happier when we stand on common ground, and we know you will be too. And so, members of the Assembly, citizens of Belfast, people of Northern Ireland, remember that in the early days of the American Republic, the Gaelic term for America was Inishfoil, Island of Destiny. Today, Americans see you as Inishfoil, and your destiny is peace. America is with you. The entire world is with you. May God be with you and give you strength for the good work ahead. Thank you very much. Thank you.